Welcome to a new edition of Iconic Sonics. I'm your host, Mike Gastineau, and our thanks, as always, to Swinomish Casino and Lodge outside beautiful Anacortes, Washington, and Dick's Drive-In Restaurants for bringing you the show. And our guest today, we might have to go back a ways in history to truly use the word iconic, but once you get back to that point, there's no doubt the word fits. Chris Ackerley, the son of Barry Ackerley, the former owner of the Sonics. And Chris is now a minority owner in the Kraken, and we've got a lot of things to talk about. Chris, the funny thing is, we had somebody from our company reach out to me and say, "Hey, we're thinking of getting Chris Ackerley. Do you know him?" And I go, "Well, I think I met him his senior year at Arizona, which is many years ago. So yeah, I know him. We go back a long ways. It's good to see you, and it's exciting for me to see you and the family involved in the latest thing in Seattle sports, which of course is the Kraken and Climate Pledge Arena. We'll talk more about that later, but just quickly, I'm sure it's been, I know everybody wants more success on the ice this year, that notwithstanding. The experience looks like it's been great from the perspective maybe that you'd be bringing to it.
Hey, Mike, good to see you. Great to be with you. And yeah, really value the history that we share dating back to the days with Sports Radio 950. And I think your timing's right, going back to that senior year at the University of Arizona, which would be back in the early 90s. Look, it's been a great journey for us being a part of the creation of the Kraken and Climate Pledge Arena. And my brother Ted and I actually got home late last night after being up in Vancouver with Todd Lewicki and Victor and David Wright and the coaching staff and Ron. And it was really an opportunity, which have been hard to come by because of COVID, to travel with the group, see them, and just spend some time on the road, getting a sense for how everyone's doing and everyone's thinking as we look to wrap up our first season, which we all think has been a tremendous success. And the wins will come because I think there's a commitment to doing the right thing for the long term and having a franchise in this city that's going to compete year after year, much the same way we ultimately finally achieved over the 90s with the Supersonics. So I think if you look at that decade, if we can replicate that with the Kraken and even summit the mountain and bring the cup back to Seattle, I think that would be a great story.
Bringing the cup to Seattle would be a great story. You are right about that. We'll talk more about the Kraken in a while. I want to touch on the Sonics and we'll start kind of in the present day. I look at your, involvement, if you will, with whatever the Sonic story is, and you and your brother Ted, your family. From an observer standpoint, you tell me if I'm right, it feels like even since the final days of maybe the Clay Bennett era here, you guys have served as almost a liaison to the NBA from the Seattle business community. I think you're probably trusted by the NBA. They know your family. They know the name and the history up here. And this thing that we all went through in 08 and now all these years since, where we're all hoping to get the team back. The league needs someone they can talk to within Seattle, and the city of Seattle needs someone that can talk to the league. Am I right on that? Is that a role that you've filled a little bit? And I know there are others doing it, but is that where you describe where you're at with the NBA and the Sonics as of today?
Well, a couple of things. One, first and foremost, and Adam would say this as the commissioner, that once you've been a member of the NBA family, you're always a member of the NBA family. So the relationship with him and the league office continues to be a good one. Beyond that, when you look at the present tense and you look at the collective of the people involved in our group today with the Kraken Climate Pledge Arena, led by David Bonderman and others, and certainly the Lewicki brothers, their experience speaks for itself and their relationships in sports. We've a strong group. Look to Andy Jassy, who we brought into the group as the CEO of Amazon, and the relationship that they have with the league. So the collective value of the relationships that our group has across sports and with the league is very positive. So I think people should feel good about the likelihood that the right conversations can happen at the right time about how the NBA can consider Seattle as a home once again. And yes, our family cares deeply about the history of the NBA in Seattle, of course. Hard to believe how many years it's been now since we've been without Supersonics basketball. And when you look at the platform, Mike, that we've been fortunate to be a part of creating with Climate Pledge Arena and the Kraken Community Iceplex, where it's been designed where it can be added onto to accommodate a training facility for an NBA franchise, we want to be a part of a platform story. That was the goal. They would at least give us a legitimate opportunity to have the facilities and the right people in place to make it happen. And we've always said, if we can be a part of making something happen that paves the way for the return when the league's ready, we want to do everything we can.
You said something there that I have not heard. Maybe it's been said before, but I had not heard anybody say that the Northgate facility, which is beautiful and is still not completely done, but is really great and in a great part of town and easily accessible, could easily be expanded into an NBA training facility. I had not heard that. Is that a conversation that's happened, or is that just kind of an acknowledged within your group that this is probably where we'd go?
Yeah, no, it's actually something that's been stated before out in the public, that when it was designed, just as Climate Pledge Arena was built to make sure it was a world-class home for basketball as much as hockey and entertainment, that venue has the capacity to be added onto if the group wants to, at the right time, use that as a platform for that type of operation. So it does have that capacity, and we're glad that it gives us some flexibility.
Chris, you talked about timing a few minutes ago, and a couple of weeks back, Adam Silver made a statement, said, well, it's not, expansion isn't really a front burner issue right now. And I think people felt like that was throwing a lot of cold water on things. I did not. I've tried to tell people, look, I don't think we're going to get an announcement tomorrow. Maybe we're going to get one today from you. I don't believe that's going to happen, though. But the league will expand when the owners say they want to do it. Now, that could, in theory, be tomorrow. It could be next week. It might be next year. But they're not going to do a bunch of, well, we're thinking about it. Well, we might do it. Well, it could be next month. My belief, and I don't know, you tell me if I'm wrong, would be that when the owners are ready, that's when we'll get an announcement, and it won't be preceded by a bunch of teases. It'll be like, nope, here's what we're doing.
Yes, and Mike, as you very well know, our group has been consistent in letting the market know that we do not want to get ahead of the commissioner. It's just never a good idea in any league. And that was really our objective when we were active in the NBA with the Sonics when they were here in Seattle. It's just a critical dynamic that's important to respect. But I will say that it's really a dynamic that's tied to the conversation that he ultimately will have with his board of governors and a certain subcommittee of that board of governors at the right time. And anything that gets in front of that, is something that probably isn't worth considering. So I think you're right that they will ultimately make a decision at some point down the road. And when that decision's made, there will be clarity through the right leadership at the league on what that's going to look like, with who, when, et cetera. We're just super excited about the fact, first and foremost, that we've got a great venue. It's world-class. We've got a world-class hockey franchise emerging, and the platform gives us a real good chance for the board of governors and the commissioner to consider Seattle as an option as we move forward.
Well, let's talk about your involvement with the Sonics and your family's involvement, because again, it's funny how fast time passes. You're to a point now where a 24, 25-year-old person might not even remember the Sonics in Seattle. Certainly, unless you're 40 or so, you don't remember the NBA Finals in 1996. And there's probably people on the podcast right now going, well, who is this guy? Because history moves along pretty fast. This guy is the son of the guy who bought the Sonics from the original owner, right? Barry bought the team from Sam Schulman, Barry Ackerley, who had the Sonics. He had a media empire, really, by the time it was all said and done. You, I think, were in high school when Barry bought the team. What was that like? What was it? It's like, what's your dad do? Oh, he owns the Sonics. I mean, what was it like to be a kid one day goofing around, and the next day my dad owns the Seattle Supersonics?
Well, Mike, we were in 8th grade, my twin brother Ted and I at the time. And much like most things that happened through the years after he moved the family to Seattle with our mom, Ginger, if there were big things being considered, there was always a conversation at the family dinner table. And there was an evening when we were in 8th grade in 1983 where he literally sat down with us and said, there's a unique opportunity that's come to my attention that I'm strongly considering, and it's to buy the Seattle Supersonics. So when you're an 8th grade kid, you play basketball and your dad puts that out there, it's pretty darn exciting. So that was a life-changing moment, to say the least. And that was the beginning of what would lead to a great 18-year run with the Sonics franchise. And he was always very inclusive of the family in big decisions. And, Ginger, as you would know, Mike, was his life partner. And they would always have very thoughtful conversations and include us and let us know what those were and what that might look like for the family moving forward.
What was it like? And I don't know how long into it this happened, but being a pro sports owner is different than anything else because there's a whole section of the paper dedicated to sports, and you're just going to do something that eventually irritates or upsets people. It's the nature of the beast. One thing to go, oh, it's cool, Dad owns the Sonics. It's another thing the first time you either pick up the paper or listen to the radio or hear a friend say he doesn't know what he's doing. What did you guys talk about that in advance at all? Or what was that like to realize that, okay, we're in a different place now? Dad is a public figure and we're going to have to deal with this from time to time.
So, Mike, I remember when the announcement was officially made, when he had the press conference with Sam Schulman down in the locker room at the Kingdom. And I was actually in the attendance office, I believe, at the junior high school we attended in Bellevue. And I think they had Cairo radio on. And it said, breaking news, local media businessman Barry Ackerley's agreed to buy the Seattle Supersonics from Sam Schulman. And there were 6 or 7 people behind the counter in that office. And they turned around and looked at me sitting in the chair. And they're like, "Is that your dad?" So that was the moment where we knew things were changing, to be sure. And, despite the fact that we were part of a media business that at the time in 1983 was still in its infancy, some 7 years into its development, the understanding of what it would be like to have he as a public figure, the name out there, was out there on the billboards, as you would well know, here in Seattle. But that was a life-changing moment. So it was the beginning of really seeing what is it like, because it's, the passion that people have about their sports team is very personal. Mm-hmm. And we always like to say that the worst thing that could happen walking into a Seattle sports bar was that you hear nobody talking about the Sonics. If they're awful, if they're good, whatever. If they're terrible and people are arguing about it, well, you can work with that. And even if that includes a conversation about management and the choices they're making, passion is something you can work with. And we certainly saw a lot of that over the 18 years.
Without question. And it should be stated, and I've had this discussion with a lot of people, as people look back on, was Barry a good owner or not? I say, hey, 18 years, 14 in the playoffs, 3 to the Western Conference Finals, 1 to the NBA Finals, and got an arena done in 1996. I mean, I think until Paul Allen came along with both Mike Holmgren and then supersized it with Pete Carroll, I think Barry was by far the most successful owner in this city's history. And I think you probably have to give it to the late Paul Allen now with the Super Bowl championship, but Barry's right there. It did an awful lot. Did you feel like legacy wise, when you guys stepped away, that, okay, this is a pretty secure thing now, the things have been pretty successful?
Yeah, I mean, when you look at that 18-year run with the Sonics and you think, as you said, about the development and launch of Key Arena, 1999, we launched the Seattle Storm that was predominantly guided by the leadership of our mom, Ginger. We had a professional indoor soccer team in 1997 in a league that wasn't around very long. That's the world of indoor pro soccer, but we did win the championship in that league over Houston. And then, of course, we always thought about the relationship with Sports Radio 950 KJR. So when you look at the collective, you say there's real measurable impact there over a real period of time, and felt really good about that window. And there's highs and lows, that's life, but collectively, yes, felt really good about the legacy. So when we made the decision to explore the sale of the Seattle Supersonics, at the time I was president of our company. Dad was chairman and CEO, mom was co-chair. We had a board discussion, one thing led to another. We made the same decision we knew we would come to through a lot of prior conversations, that if the day ever came, it would have to be with a local group, because this is a city treasure. This is a community asset. We are the stewards, and we're going to do our best to be good stewards. And we didn't hire a bank. It was me and our general counsel from Washington, D.C., obviously getting a lot of strategic guidance from Barry and Ginger. And the history. We put together at the time what we thought was a tremendous deal for the city by having an incredibly capable group of local businessmen with a lot of history here who care about the city, led by Howard Schultz, to take on the next chapter of Seattle Supersonics basketball. So at the time, we thought our legacy was solid as we exited, and we felt good about the road ahead based on the collective talents and financial ability of that group.
And without getting into everything that happened, because it's well-worn territory and we know, and you couldn't have possibly imagined things going off the rails the way they did. Um, that all being said, as we got near the end of that, as the Oklahoma group came in, as it became evident to everyone, look, they're going to try and move the team. I don't know if I've ever asked you this before. Did you involve yourself at all as a behind the scenes guy of maybe reaching out to David Stern and saying, hey, can we put the brakes on this? Would that have even been appropriate? Were you in a position where you could do anything? And ultimately, I don't think anybody could have stopped the train. But were there any conversations like that? Like, hey, can we slow down a little bit and take a breath before we let this thing go?
Well, Mike, I think at the time we really looked at the situation much like the transition of a presidency. That we had our run, we made our decisions, we have completed our exit, and it's not our place to stand near the situation that's evolving based on what the new leadership is working through. So we did not really. I remember going to a lunch meeting just to meet Mr. Bennett after he came to town. I went with my father and my brother, and it was just a welcome to Seattle based on our history. If we can be helpful, we're happy to do so. And we wished him well and said that we very much hope that there is a healthy, good next chapter for the Seattle Supersonics here. And that was really the last conversation that we had tied to any of it.
You've got to be respectful to a certain extent of the people who are in the game, in other words, right? I mean, you can only insert yourself so much when you don't have any money involved in it. You had more passion and local pride, and that only goes so far at the business table.
Yes.
How personal then is the potential for this team coming back to you? You're not even close to being done yet. And if we listed everything you're involved in, we'd be here till tomorrow afternoon. You guys have been a tremendous partner with the city on some things, partner with businesses on other things. You've invested in companies, you've got a foundation, all of this stuff. And it's not like your legacy is incomplete. However, how important would it be to you as a family to play any role whatsoever, whether it's minority owner, whether it's a larger ownership stake, whether it's brokering a deal that would someday land the Sonics back here? What would that mean to you personally to be involved in that?
So we came here in '76, Mike, and as we discussed earlier, the world changed for us in '83 when Dad bought the team, and that's a rich history. 18 years is a meaningful part of anyone's life. And we've tried to do our best as a family based on their leadership to lean in and make a difference in the community. And for us, being a part of the group, a great group that came together to create this Climate Pledge Arena, bring the Kraken to town. And the vision for this thing has no bounds. You look at a 74-acre campus at Seattle Center and the opportunity to make it an ever more dynamic gathering place for our city. And the NBA returning for us, like being a part of the platform that we know gives us a really good shot to see that happen. That's huge for us. So we're grateful to the opportunity that we were provided with by Mr. Bonderman to join the group. And as I said earlier, between the relationship with the league and the building, quietly, we're going to continue to do everything we can to be a part of making it happen. I want to say that's not to diminish the commitment at all that we have made and have very strongly for the success and growth of the Kraken. We just think that this is a platform that can do both, and we will do what we can. And right now, what that ultimately ends up looking like in terms of our role and our stake, but we're very pleased to be with a group that has the ability and the relationships to play a meaningful role in making it happen. And we know how much that matters to the city and the region. And we have a lot of history down there. Both Mrs. Ackerley and I are past chairs of the board at Pacific Science Center. I'm on the board at the Space Needle, so I get to work closely with the Wright family, who's very committed to Seattle, and David Wright is our vice chair. So there's a lot of really good moving pieces here. And then when you throw in the passion and the commitment to this community that Todd Lewicki has demonstrated time in and time again, we just have a lot of really good elements. And I think for us, being a part of that is giving us the best opportunity to make an impact and be a part of driving it. So the story is yet to be written and the final details are yet to be mapped out, but we feel really good about where we are and extremely grateful to be with the group we're a part of.
I think, let's wave a wand and say it's going to happen. I think that first night, I believe for a lot of people, and I'll put myself in this group, I believe you, your family, a lot of it will be as emotional a night in a non-family way, births and deaths and weddings and all that. You remove all that, it'll be probably the most emotional night of a lot of our lives, because I don't think any of us thought it would be this long. And I imagine you'd feel some of that emotion that night.
Mike, no question. It gives me chills thinking about it. And, we think a lot about how close we came to summit the mountain in '96 against the darn good Bulls team. And, be it the Kraken, and one day they're bringing the cup back to Seattle, or being there that night and seeing the joy in the faces of this community to see the Sonics back where they belong when it happens. And right now it's an if, but we look forward to a when. It would be a tremendous night, and there's no doubt it would be emotional. And hey, what a lift it would provide to the great city of Seattle.
Unbelievable. One last thing on the Sonics, and then we'll move on and talk a little more hockey. The 90s, you referenced them a couple times. It really is amazing. I moved here in '91, and the way the city was just kind of popping. Seattle's always had this feeling like, oh, we're up in the upper left and nobody pays attention to us. And all of a sudden in the 90s, here's the music scene whirling around Seattle. Here's the computer scene, craft beers, coffee, movies, TV show. We were the cool kids in school for a couple of years, Chris. And at the center of that, the hottest club in town, the place everybody wanted to be, was wherever the Sonics were playing. And at first it was the Coliseum, and then a year at the Tacoma Dome, and then a few great years at Key Arena. That run, what are your memories of that outside of the obvious, like going to the finals and all that? But it just night in, night out, it was so much fun. What do you think of when you think back on those years?
Yeah, awesome description, because that decade was so much fun. And it's so true that if you lived and worked in Seattle at that time, it was like, I've got to be at Key Arena. That's the place to go. There's no other place. That's the center of the energy in our community right now that brings people together. And what a great team. I mean, for us, when we think about the 90s, think about the team that made the run of the finals in '96, but you also think about that first Pacific Division championship that we had in the early 90s, and that first trip to the Western Finals against the Lakers. And I remember when we won our first Pacific Division championship, we just walked as a family over to, it was one of Mick McHugh's restaurants over there on Lower Queen Anne.
Right, the Jakes or T.S. McHugh's,
Yeah, I think it was T.S. McHugh's. And we were so excited, and Dad bought the whole place around, and it was like, this is the beginning of something really special. And that decade was incredible, and a lot of incredibly talented people made it happen. I know that George Karl has been very much a part of this, and congratulations to him on the Hall of Fame. And hey, that was he was a transformative person in the whole equation in getting that team to perform at such a high level over so many years. So incredible decade. Didn't want to miss a night at Key Arena. And, we pretty much didn't, because we were so involved in the operation and wanted to see how everything was going night in and night out. But it was always fun, even if we were walking the building, talking to people, to, get your head in one of those vomitories and watch a Sonics fast break. And you didn't want to miss the lob from Gary to Sean. So it was, we just feel super blessed to have been a part of that era of Sonics basketball in this city. And we'll never forget it. I mean, you got to remember Calabro and Marcus and the calls that Kevin's made, the iconic calls that really just created this unique, iconic window of the brand of Sonics basketball. And boy, they were good. And then on the flip side, of course, we remember how disappointed we were, to put it mildly, after we lost to Denver. We all went and sat on a patio at Mom and Dad's house, and it was just sheer silence. It was a beautiful day. It was opening day of boating season.
Yeah, it was nice.
There were people we knew that were like, you know what? I'm going out on the lake because I'm going to go to the next round. It's okay to miss that game.
Yeah,
And lo
yeah.
and behold, there was no next game. And we felt that that team that year was the best team in the NBA at 63-19 and had a legitimate shot to get there. And boy, what a disappointment for us all that was. But at the same time, what an incredible season it was. So it was an incredible decade, Mike. And, if that could be replicated in the future, it'd be fantastic. And as I said earlier, goals to put a decade or more like that together with the Seattle Kraken and to bring the cup back to Seattle. So those moments are things that you just have so much joy in. And I will always remember walking out of Key Arena when we beat the Jazz to go to the finals. And you just stand there in this sea of humanity, and nobody cares how people vote, how they look, where they live, what they drive. We are all one big happy family. And we saw that again at the rally, but in the moment, and as you well know, sport is one of those rare things on earth that can do that to a community in a nanosecond. And that's one of those things that gets you excited about being involved with it, because it's incredible. And we certainly want to replicate that again.
Well, we'll talk about replicating that with the Kraken as we continue. Chris Ackerley is our guest on Iconic Sonics. The Ackerleys, of course, owned the Sonics. Barry was the owner from 83 to 2001, I think, right around there. And we talked about that. Of all things, here we are about 4 or 5 years ago, and then there's a lot of rumor about maybe the NHL is going to come here. We're going to get an arena done. And all of a sudden I see your names popping into this. I'm like, oh, didn't they learn their lesson the first time? They're coming back into pro sports. And we talked about a moment ago, the buzz that creates in a town from sports, and the feeling when you come out of an arena after a really big game, or out of a football stadium after there is a joy in the air that's almost impossible to describe. And I'm sure that's part of what brought you back. Let me just put it in your words. What was it? And let's start with, how did that happen? Did they call you? Did you call them? How did your involvement as a Kraken owner and you and Ted, how did that happen?
So it dates back to late 2016 and into the front of 2017, when the city put the RFP out for redevelopment of Key Arena. And we studied that, and there was a real commitment to find a solution. And there were really two groups that emerged as parties of interest: AEG, Phil Anschutz' group, and then OVG, the newer development company launched by Tim Lewicki, who used to run AEG for Phil Anschutz. And we had a conversation with both groups, and without a doubt, you look at Tim Lewicki, his intelligence, his energy, his ability to get people together to do big things. We were believers that he and his group would be the right group to make this happen. So we let City Hall know at that time, back in early 2017, that we thought that was the right path to travel. So at that point, we stayed close to it. And then conversations ensued when we knew that there was an opportunity to explore an application for the National Hockey League. Todd Lewicki being back as the number 2 at the National Football League. Conversations ensued with him. And really the pivotal moment, Mike, for us was the invitation that we received via Todd and David Bonderman to come to our offices and have a conversation in late 2017 and talk about the future of the building, the prospects for the NHL. And David Bonderman very graciously extended an invitation to us to be part of a local group that would support his efforts to bring the National Hockey League here. And you got to tip your cap to Todd on his recognition that with David, even with his history, rich history in Seattle, but living out of the market, it would be really valuable to him and to David and the organization to have a good local group. So that was when the moment happened for us, and he extended that invitation and we accepted, and we rolled up our sleeves, and the rest is history. Behind me here, I've got a great picture that commemorates the moment we did the press conference over at the Space Needle to introduce that first core group of local partners. And it's a great memory for us, because it's a really strong front end of what's become an incredible group that's making this happen.
Well, and Climate Pledge Arena is even more so than from the Coliseum to Key Arena, which was transformative. The Key Arena was completely different. This one is even more so. And yet I find myself going back to something we talked about earlier. I'm sure it was pretty emotional as you saw that coming together. You understand from being involved with the ownership the first time and working with your dad on that. And we talked about what sports means to a community, and sports has to have a building to play in. What this building means to this community in terms of bringing people back in, and it would have been a shame to see it just continue to erode, which is what it felt like it was doing. The Storm were doing their best, and they were winning championships and doing great at Key Arena, but you need more in there. And it's great that the Storm is a part of this new building. But I, I was I want to say I couldn't believe it, but I could. I mean, arenas move forward, but you walk into this building, the difference is stark, Chris. It's unbelievable what a world-class building looks like in this day and age. And that's what that is.
It is, Mike. And as you've often heard by now, I mean, it's a brand new building under an iconic roof. That's
Right.
the way we like to describe it. And so the roof was preserved, doubled the square footage from 400,000 to 800,000 useful square feet. You wanted to have all the bells and whistles and amenities to serve the fans who support you. Ingress, egress for entertainment and concerts is second to none. And a lot of that's driven by the fact that when you look at Tim and his group and the experience they have building world-class venues across the country and the world, and the partnership with Irving Azoff and Live Nation. These are serious people who understand what things need to look like to function at the highest level so that Seattle gets the best entertainment that any venue in the country is going to see. And that's happened, and it will continue to happen with this venue. It's interesting, we were at the Rogers Arena in Vancouver last night to see the Canucks play the Kraken. That building opened in 1995, the same time as Key Arena, and it's still there. So you look around, we spent time with the leadership there. We spent the evening with the Aquilinis, and they've done a great job continuing to invest in that venue. But having that, that major league franchise in there in the Canucks and the commitment that they've made to that community through that, they've continued to invest. And if you don't, well, we know what can happen. So the good news here is our relationship to Climate Pledge Arena is just like the one the Mariners have at T-Mobile and the Seahawks rather have at Lumen Field. We control the operation, we can make investment, and we will continually do everything we can to listen to the fans through surveys and the community to make it a great venue for them. So the physical space is great, but we both know that it's tremendous and there are no boundaries to how great it can be based on the energy from the fans and the people who are spending their hard-earned dollar to spend their time with us. So we want to give them a great experience. And Todd and the team and our partners from OVG, Tim and his team are doing a really good job constantly iterating, because every day we always say, make us better. And how can we be better tomorrow? And so a lot of energy going into the off season because we're going to use it as an opportunity to get better. And it's a great platform. Climate Pledge Arena is a truly great platform.
One of the things we were talking in the first segment about the Sonics and will they come back? And yes, they will. And what will the timing be? Well, nobody knows. How much, the Kraken and Todd Lewicki is kind of the voice of the team, has said, hey, we want the NBA back. We built the arena for that. This is something, he's used the same thing. We're not going to get ahead of the story, but this is what we want. That being said, it's only common sense to think the other thing they want as an organization, and you can address this a little bit, they want to make sure they're good and established. You don't necessarily want to bring a team in right away as you're getting your legs under you. Am I onto something there? Is that part of it? Not that the Kraken's holding up anything. Again, it would be the NBA owners who really dictate the timetable. But from a Kraken perspective, it might be good to say, look, let's get a couple of years under our belt and get our sea legs under us before we bring in another franchise. Is that good? Is that something that's been thought about and talked about?
It has. I mean, ideally, when the opportunity presents itself, you've got to go after it and make it happen. But until such time, the focus, energy, and commitment to building a strong connection between the Kraken and this community is second to none. And having more runway to keep building on the success that's been established through a lot of hard work. And it all starts with the community stepping up, our corporate partners, the fans. It's been a great first year at the arena, but yes, we're going to do everything we can to make the most out of the relationship that's been established between the community and the team and keep building on that. the best we possibly can, keep investing in that so that there really is a strong foundation for the franchise, because the goal is for that franchise to be here forever and for that franchise to be one of the best in the league, and something that this community can feel really proud about, both on and off the ice. And you know, through Todd's leadership and everybody in the organization, and starting at the top with our group, that commitment is very strong, and we'll make the most of it. But when the opportunity presents itself to do something to support the path for the NBA, we'll look forward to that.
Has the fervent response of the community to the Kraken, I mean, the city itself obviously loves the idea of a new team, but there's also a huge hockey community in this town. And I'll be honest, I mean, I knew it existed. I didn't know how big and how deep it was. Was that eye-opening to you at all as you got into this and go, wow, look at the response to this? Because it's, the whole how fast you sold out tickets, and it was truly an amazing thing. Were you at all, did that open your eyes a little bit as to the potential for hockey in this market?
Yeah, no question, Mike. I mean, the response was incredible. I mean, the best response, not only in hockey, but in sport, to the launch of a new franchise and the demonstration of support from our community for this organization, for the new building, has been incredible. So yeah, totally eye-opening. And, as our market's grown, and many very capable people from around the world have chosen to move to the Seattle area for work and a really high standard quality of life. With them, they bring knowledge from other places, and a lot of those places have hockey. So I think the knowledge of the game and the market going in as an expansion team was greater than anyone might have thought at the outset, because we've benefited from so many dynamic people coming here with that experience from other markets, and then they share it with their friends. And you can feel it when you're at the games. There's that balance between people that are now here, they love the energy, they're curious, they want to learn more, they want to support it, and then they've got community members there sitting with them that are like, well, let me tell you why that just happened. So there's this cool collaborative thing that's happening in the building as a community at a Kraken game. But yeah, there's a very substantial number of people here who bring a lot of hockey knowledge to the market.
How many times in the first season have you had to tap somebody on the shoulder and ask what just happened out there? And I'm not saying you didn't know hockey, but for everybody here, it's a new experience. You're the older hotshot. Did you ever have to go, hey, wait a minute, what was that out there? If I'm going to yell at the ref, I want to know what I'm yelling about.
So admittedly, Mike, one of the first things I did several years ago is this all began is I went and bought the book Hockey for Dummies.
Good.
I said, look, if we're going to do this right, let's get started at the ground floor and build the right foundation of knowledge. And then, we've benefited from so many people that have gotten involved, obviously, that know it really well. The interest in the game's always been there, but it's just been far afield. I think we probably saw some Rangers games when we lived in Connecticut when we were really young before we came to Seattle. And then I asked people in the organization who have a lot of history with the game, hockey side, operation side, where else, can we all look to create better understanding and knowledge? And then what the organization is doing, I think, is fabulous in terms of building not only the relationship between the community and the guys who skate on the ice, but creating that understanding during the game, around the game. So there's some incredible books about the history of the game. And then I love how committed the organization is to celebrate the history of the game, both with local people who made it what it's been here in the past and people who have made it what it is internationally. And there's never enough time to capture more knowledge about the game of hockey and its history. And it's a beautiful sport. It's played by an incredible group of young men. And look, I just think the future for the connection between this franchise, based on the game that it is and the people who play it, is really strong.
Chris, finally, there's a new name in the Seattle sports community, Samantha Holloway, and she's come in and tell me a little bit about her role with the franchise and what we can expect out of this.
Well, it's a pleasure for us to welcome Samantha to the executive committee, which I sit on as our executive committee chair. She's David Bonderman's daughter, and we have spent some time getting to know one another. She is very bright, very talented, very engaged. She has moved to Seattle got the kids in school. She's rolling up her sleeves, and she is a dynamic human being who brings a lot of experience and passion, honestly, to the equation of the Kraken. So very excited to work with her and to continue to work with the group that David has assembled to work collaboratively to make the best decisions we can for the success of the franchise. And Sam is a great addition. We're fortunate to have her leadership, and people are going to continue to learn more about her. And she's going to be a great face, not only of the Kraken, but for the city of Seattle as it relates to our professional sports landscape.
Yeah, I think she talked about she's going to, and without this is going to sound like she was, kind of patting herself on the back, but she talked about, I'm going to be the face of the franchise, and franchises need that. You need somebody who takes that role. And this will be interesting as we've seen women continue to rise into sports executive positions. The Kraken, I'll really pat you guys. I'll pat you on the back. You talked from day one about being diverse, and you've walked that talk. There's a lot of organizations say that. You guys have done a good job of, and this is just the latest example of saying, hey, we're going to make sure our organization is reflective of the community we're trying to reach, right? It's that simple.
Mike, appreciate that. And it's an authentic commitment demonstrated by the way our organization has been built. So it starts at the top with Mr. Bonderman and our executive committee and our investor group. But when you look at what's happening day in and day out through the leadership of Todd and Victor DeBonis, our president, COO, collectively, they're working every day to make sure the organization does truly reflect the community that it serves. And it's good for business. It's proven to be a real asset to the way this organization has been built, and it will continue to be a commitment in terms of the way the organization continues to grow moving forward, because the talent and skill set of the people in that front office is immense and the energy is terrific. So lots of good things to come, including the continued commitment to that.
You talked about, you and I have a love for this city, and like a lot of cities right now, Seattle's taken some shots. It's been tough, 2 years of a pandemic. Lots of turmoil, political arguments, all these things. Before all of this started, you talked with Chris Daniels over at King about how the new arenas in 2018, the new arena could be a catalyst, actually you said would be a catalyst for change in the community. And I thought of that the other night. I was coming down into Queen Anne, and the way an arena can be a gathering place. And I'm basically bringing this story up to get a cheap laugh out of you. I'm coming into Queen Anne. And the Kraken are playing that night against Colorado. But of course, I'm coming in to go to McCall Hall to see the Alice Cooper show, which is happening. And I was looking around for you. Like, Chris, where are you? I thought we were going to meet at the big Alice Cooper show. My point being, here's 2,000, 2,500 people at this building. Here's 15, 18, whatever you guys had for Colorado that night. Queen Anne is buzzing a little bit. The restaurants are full. The bars are full. Catalyst for change. It was necessary in 2018 because you want an arena to be a gathering place. It's crucial in 2022 as we try to bring people into this community, Chris, and at Lumen Field, at T-Mobile, at Climate Pledge Arena, at any gathering spot. It's crucial right now for those things to be successful and to be good. And I don't know what my question for you here is, other than to say, why weren't you at the Alice Cooper show? I guess that's my question.
Well, I think we wanted to book him for that same night, but we had Colorado in town. I was across the street watching the Kraken beat the Colorado Avalanche, which was a great win. I really appreciate you mentioning that, Mike. And I remember that discussion with Chris because it was the day that our local group of partners was announced. You hear it often in sports about buildings being the centerpiece of an urban redevelopment story. And, when you look at Seattle Center, 74 acres with some really dynamic agencies that surround it. But how can our group lever Climate Pledge Arena and our commitment to it to keep working with the city and the other partners around that green space to truly make it a beautiful, dynamic urban gathering center and a place where the Gastineau family would get up on a Saturday and say, well, I know what we're going to do today. We're going to go down to Seattle Center and we're going to do this and we're going to do that because it's 21st century stuff that gets you excited about living in Seattle. So it should be something that's great for our residents and our visitors alike. And, there are more things to come, right? We did the monorail project. We're working on some things at the Armory. I mean, the list of innovative solutions is endless. And these are things you have to have if you're going to be a truly world-class city. And Seattle has all of the talent and ability and its innovation economy rather to be that and more. And we want to play a role in that. So it is exciting when you drive up and you see that energy around the building. And you probably noticed during the season, all those lights were added to the trees off the east side of Climate Pledge Arena around Seattle Center. There are all the new digital kiosks around Seattle Center. So our organization did that as a commitment to the city that, we want to keep doing more because we want this to be a great, legitimate gathering place for our city. And it will be. And then here's one for you. We've got to come up with a name for that beautiful green space adjacent to Climate Pledge Arena. So when the Kraken are in the Stanley Cup playoffs, we have a name for that space, kind of like Classic Park for the Raptors back in Toronto when they've got 20,000 people outside that arena when they're making a playoff run. So that's something exciting for us to look forward to.
Yeah, did you see the Suns in their run? They've brought in, I don't know why they brought in a bunch of sand. I guess they went outside of town, brought a bunch of sand in. They've got Raleigh Beach next to their arena. So it's something like that. Well, it's fun to think about that, and I love the talk about the future success and the Stanley Cup and bringing the playoffs in. It's great to feel optimistic about things. For a long time, winter sports in this town, it was tough to be optimistic, and now all of a sudden with the Kraken and their success, I'll quote our friend Todd Lywicki, who was on this show and said, it's not an if thing, it's a when thing. And I say, hey, don't get ahead of the commissioner, my man. But he said, no, it's a when thing. So here's my thing for you. When the Sonics come back, I believe, and you mentioned it, I worked for your dad at KJR for years and knew him a little bit and watched him. And I think when the Sonics are back, I want you to promise me that at least one night you will sit courtside and bark at an official for a few minutes in honor of your father, who would probably love that, to think, okay, good, the kids are there and they are letting the refs have it a little bit from the front row. Can you do that? Can you commit to that for me?
Mike, I think we can do that, but what we're going to need to do on your end is we're going to have to dust off a road hog somewhere out there in the urban landscape and park it outside Climate Pledge Arena so we can have you guys out there broadcasting again live, because that's just such an iconic memory for me of the approach to Key Arena and those great days we had with the Sonics there. So we'll do the road hog first, and then we'll hit courtside and see how that goes.
Where is the road? I wonder if the road hog still exists, and I wonder what you guys got, or somebody got something for it, because I haven't seen it for years. I'm sure it got sold to someone.
I was kind of thinking maybe the Fabulous Sports Babes touring all the national parks in it.
she might. I was in the road hog after Edgar Martinez hit the double that beat the Yankees, and I feared for my life for a few minutes because people just, for some reason, crowds like, hey, let's go rock the road hog.
Yeah,
like, oh boy, this is no good. No good will come from this.
Well, Mike, I do want to say that our history together is important to our family. So thank you for your contributions to Seattle through the broadcast medium and all the things that you've done for so many charities. And it's one of those things that's an extension of what makes sports so great. Is yes, there's games and there's players and there's wins and losses, but the impact broadly of people who are connected to it is immense. And you're one of those people in our community that has done a lot to lever a sports environment to do a lot for a community. So thank you.
And Chris, thanks to you. And it'll be fun. It feels like this big circle that took a lot longer than we all thought is coming together. And hopefully soon we're coloring in the last line of the circle and connecting it. And the Sonics are back. I appreciate your time and all your work in the community, Chris. Thanks a lot.
Mike, great to see you. Thank you.
Chris Ackerley, our guest on Iconic Sonics. It's all brought to you by Swinomish Casino and Lodge outside Anacortes and Dick's Drive-In Restaurants. For more information on this show and other episodes of Iconic Sonics, go to iconicsonics.com. I'm Mike Gastineau. We'll see you next time.